Hello, darlings. Pull up a chair. I've got pineapple tea. I could get you coffee or tea. The choice is yours, but we're definitely not having cake because I'm on a health kick. Anyway, today I thought I'd do another walk down memory lane because it is good to agitate the grey cells now and again. And thinking back, it is surprising how much you remember. I'm going to start with shops in the UK from the 1970s, 1980s time. Who remembers shopping in QuickSave? Now, QuickSave would be one of those pile them high and sell them cheap shops. They were for people who didn't have a lot of money. Frankly, my friend and I didn't have a lot of money, and we would shop there. Everything was sold from cardboard boxes. There was no fancy shelving. There was nothing apart from these pallets stocked high with whatever they were selling. So my friend Jan and I would go there. She had a car, so she would take me there. We would go once a week. We'd do QuickSave and B-Jams. They used to sell freezers as well, chest freezers. We didn't have enough money for a chest freezer, so we would buy frozen things and keep them in a tiny freezer bit in our fridge. But I was talking to her the other day, and I can remember being at the checkout with her. She has arachnophobia, that's the fear of spiders. I saw this, I swear to God, it was the largest spider ever. It must have been about 2 inches across. And in those days, we would wear these very tall platform shoes, about 3 inches. And we had big, long, baggy trousers that went all the way to the floor. I saw this great big spider crawl across the floor and it went up her trouser leg. And I thought, has it gone up her trouser leg? Apparently it did, because suddenly she was dancing all over the place trying to get this blessed thing out. That traumatised her so much, she remembers it to this day, and I often bring it up because it was actually hilarious. We used to go to QuickSave, and sometimes that's where she would get her dog food from, just for a laugh, because I was like that in those days. I'd say to her, do you know, Jan, what are you making with your dog food this week? She would say, because she was equally naughty, especially if there were other people in the queue. She'd say, well, last week I made a pie for John with the dog food, and he didn't notice at all, and people would look at us. And then she might say, well, I'm trying it in bolognese this week. And the looks of horror we used to get. It was actually hilarious. Do you remember Beta shoes? They were very cheap. Some might say Beta was cheap and nasty, but if you didn't have a lot of money, the mere fact that they didn't last long and they were primarily plastic or synthetic did mean you could buy a pair of shoes for maybe £1.50 in old money. So I would often be sent there, that or Curtis shoes. Curtis shoes were equally cheap and cheerful. They were never leather. I didn't have leather shoes whilst living with my father and stepmother. It was always the cheapest. And they would wear out very quickly. One day at school, I had a big hole in my shoe, and it had been raining, and the cardboard I put in my shoes had all soaked. I can remember actually being able to smell my own feet from underneath the desk for most of the day. That was gross. Who remembers Clark's shoes? They're still going now, but do you remember those great big wooden X-ray machines that you could put your feet in and see where your toes were coming to in the shoes? I used to love going on that thing, even though I wasn't getting the shoes. Apparently, they were giving you very high doses of X-rays, and they were dangerous. Who knew? They were in there for years, and eventually they stopped using them. Honest to God, isn't that amazing? The things that we would do for fun. And I don't know whether you've got it in America still, but Woolworths has long gone in England. I can remember going to the pick and mix part of Woolworths, and loving it. All the choices you would buy for £1/4 of this, that and the other, and then you just go out with a nice paper bag full of sweeties. I have to say, when I was at boarding school, we were never allowed to go into Woolworths because it was thought it was too common. Can you believe that? Honest to God, it was just so ridiculous. So we weren't allowed to go into that shop. We could go into all the other little shops, but certainly not Woolworths. Who remembers coming back from Tesco with reams of Green Shield stamps and then spending hours sticking them into the book? Once you'd got your Green Shield stamp book filled, you could go to the catalogue and see what you wanted to buy. I used to love being the person that stuck in the stamps. Did you ever cook? I say that loosely. No. Rehydrate Vesta curries. When I got married in 1973, I couldn't cook. And to be honest, I don't like cooking now, but I used to always buy Vesta curries because I thought they were the height of sophistication. I pour out this dry stuff into a pan, add the water, and the smell was, in my memory, delicious. I thought it tasted lovely, and we did enjoy it. The other Vesta dinner that I used to make was risotto because it only took one pan, and frankly, that was brilliant. In those days, you were lucky if you had a TV. Not everyone had a TV. Not everybody was rich enough to have a TV. But if you did have a TV, it wasn't on the wall. It was in a cabinet, which was probably twice the size of the TV. They were very deep, and the screen was tiny. It was no more than a portable, really. When I moved in to our first flat, after being homeless and being put up in temporary accommodation with the children, I was very house proud. And one day my father came round to see me, and he saw that I was washing by hand, wringing it out. I had no tumble dryer. People didn't have tumble dryers, I don't think then. It was too wet to hang things out. I had all my washing hanging over the back of chairs so that I could dry it in front of the fire. Now, when I think about it, it must have been a terrible sight. Anyway, he went out and bought me a clothes horse. Do you know, it was like manna from heaven. It really was. I can't tell you how appreciative I was for that wooden clothes horse that I used to put my washing on during the winter when nothing would dry outside. And the other thing he did for me was when they traded up from a twin tub to an automatic washing machine, they gave me their old twin tub. Now, that twin tub was a Philips. It was absolutely brilliant. You could turn it up to a boil, so all my nappies and every bit of white cotton went into it, and that's how it stayed white. Even though it didn't rinse, you had to empty the water. You had to spin all the stuff out first and hook the hose pipes over the edge of the sink to get the water to drain, and then you would have to rinse it all in the sink, spin it again. I don't think I ever used fabric conditioner because I don't think it was out then. However, I used to polish my kitchen floor tiles, and on numerous occasions the hose underneath the washing machine at the height of the boiling program would come off and flood the kitchen. Take off all the polish, and obviously I couldn't go in there until the water had cooled down. Once that happened a few times, we felt the need to save up for our own washing machine. When that was delivered, I put my first load of washing in, I got a chair and I watched it. Right from the beginning, right to the end. I was so thrilled that I wasn't having to do it myself, that I watched it. Isn't that laughable? In the 1980s, I went up to London to see the Mary Quant store. It was heavenly, a completely new experience. If you ever went to the Mary Quant store in Kings Road, Chelsea, let me know. It was just so fabulous. The ceilings were black. The ladies' department, all the clothes that the women wore would be made in miniature for the little girls. The cafeteria for for children. It had little mushroom seats and mushroom tables, all in bright red with white spots. It was so gorgeous. I don't know when it closed, but I'm glad I saw it when I did. I thought Mary Quant was totally and utterly the coolest thing ever. Do you remember being given a third of a pint of milk at school? I used to love it. A lot of children didn't like milk, but if you were a poor family, then that was a really good thing to get free, because frankly, you might not get it at home, and milk is good for your bones with all the calcium. When I went to Malaya with my parents, we weren't given milk at break time, but we did get an ice lolly, which I thought was wonderful. In England, we would always get the third of a pint of milk. To this day, I do like the taste of milk. Did your mother ever have one of those crochet dolls to hold the spare toilet roll, which you weren't allowed to use? You just had to call out and ask for another one. Did your mum ever make one of those? I know my stepmother did. And it might even still be in her downstairs loo. Last time I did one of these videos, I got some cracking comments. I want to read you out these two. This is from Simone Whip, artist. Now, Simone was saying, and I'm going to read it to you. We shared the house with my great nan, who lived in the back room and scullery. Before I was born, my mum used to use a cooker that was on the upstairs landing. It just goes to show you, doesn't it? We lived opposite a Victorian cemetery. It was a house full of supernatural happenings. It all seems a world away now. And do you know what? I think it does, because things have changed so massively. People accepted that most were poor. I can remember going to school with people who didn't have a bathroom in their house, and they had to have water boiled up and bathe in the living room. They didn't have an inside toilet. It was just outside. I remember when I would go around to call for them to walk to school, their dad would be shaving in the kitchen sink, and they'd have to brush their teeth in the kitchen sink, and that's just the way it was. And last but not least, this one was from Patricia Hayward. This one made me laugh. My auntie had the whitest sheets on the road. She lived in a rented end of terrace, and everyone who passed could see her pristine washing. Do you know what? I can identify with that too. It didn't even look like it needed ironing, but of course she did. The biggest sin ever, and these people were really sneered at, were the ones who left the pegs on the line between washers. It was considered disgusting. I remember, as a new, very nervous driver who daren't overtake, I overtook an extremely slow milk float, and whoever was in the car cheered. Table manners. My goodness, my father made mealtimes like a war zone. It was so awful I didn't want to eat because he watched every mouthful. I have to admit, I did exactly the same to my daughter, and she reminds me regularly. My father was also dreadful about grammar, particularly about double negatives, as is my own darling boy. If you haven't got none, then you must have some, he'd say. Oh, obviously. I remember that most of the cars were black. I think it cost more if you bought a coloured one. Late 50s, early 60s. You know, the old Ford saying, you can have any colour car as long as it's black. I also remember the very short skirts. Going out in one very drab outfit and changing in the toilets into something so short it hardly had any fabric in it. Also, stiletto heels that I couldn't walk in, and a hair powder, silver grey, that we all puffed into our fringes, and if you touched it, your hand was shiny silver all evening. I remember leaving my purse with quite a lot of money in a phone box, and I couldn't go dancing that night. Oh, that is tragic. Dogs roamed the street all day long and were only taken in at night. No one ever seemed to take them to the vets. Things have changed, haven't they? What are your childhood memories? These are from England, obviously, but I'm sure they're very different for you in the United States and elsewhere in the world. Let me know in the comments. And I did my exercises today and I'm still loving it. And if you have been, thanks for watching. Lots of love. Bye-bye.